Hello again, and welcome to another build. It feels like 5 minutes since I was finished with Lae'zel. I think as of the time of recording, it's been about 3 or 4 days since I uploaded that video, and I was really proud of her. I think that she stands really brilliantly amongst my collection now, and I am very keen to get into painting Karlach. Now, the story here is very similar to Lae'zel in terms of I got it from the same seller, which is Warrior Prince 3D. I'm thrilled with the quality of the model. I think the details, and I think the difference here between Lae'zel and Karlach is there is much more intricate detailing on Karlach in comparison to Lae'zel. With Lae'zel, I was able to I always sort of loosely consider it cheating, but I know it isn't. But basically with Lae'zel, with her wearing so much armor and the way in which I decide to paint that armor, it cuts a massive chunk of my workload down. That is not going to be the case for Karlach. For those of you that know the character, she has a lot of sort of leather wrapped around her. It almost doesn't look like clothing as just a collection of belts and straps that she's sort of found during her adventures and things like that. So I think the level of kind of painstaking painting is going to be much higher with Karlach than it was with Lae'zel. Saying that though, again, props to the printer. You know, the quality of the model is exquisite. There are a few pieces in which sort of support struts that are kind of remnants from the 3D printing process are left on there. But I mean, across the whole model, from where I am sat right now, I can see one. So I always like to do a little bit of a pass over the models anyway, just to kind of get them in a position that I feel is good before sort of priming and things like that. But yeah, the quality is absolutely there. I think she's going to be... I honestly think she's going to stand quite uniquely within my collection, as... I don't know, I just feel like aesthetically she has a different vibe to the rest of the stuff that I've painted so far. And I think obviously the sort of like the burning red skin, the kind of exhausts that she has dotted over her back that obviously are going to be metallic in nature. And her pose, the leather, all of that kind of stuff, you know, I think she's actually going to stand sort of quite separate from what I've painted previously, which I'm kind of excited about. The things that I'm kind of running through my head before I start, I think where Lae'zel, she's very graceful, elegant, there's a cleanliness to her that obviously, even though I decorated her with a little bit of blood spatter after having decapitated the Mind Flayer, you know, the chrome armor is very crisp and very clean. The leatherwork is gladiatorial and kind of has an elegance to it. Karlach, I feel like, I don't know, and this kind of partially goes off of the model, partially goes off of the vibe from the game. I feel like Karlach is the kid who played in the mud all the time, and so, you know, I'm going to be distressing a lot of the leather across her outfit. I'm probably going to be adding like dirt and scuffs and stuff like that to her clothing in such a way as it looks like she's kind of... Where I would describe Lae'zel when she fights as a dance, Karlach is much more of a scrap. You know, sort of like down and dirty, sort of, you know, throwing things around and crashing and breaking stuff. And I want that to be depicted on her model as I paint her. The skin is going to be obviously that kind of like burning red colour, and I think that's going to be easier to attain than it was with Lae'zel, like in terms of her skin colour. But the challenge for Karlach is going to be the infernal engine in her chest. If it is within my power and my skill, I would like to recreate the look of sort of, again, for those of you that know the character, I will put some artwork up so you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. But I want it to look like that infernal engine is burning up beneath her skin, sort of creating that kind of like hollow glow from within her chest cavity. I want to try and recreate that on the model so that it looks the part. I want to try and depict heat in her chest to kind of go with the overall vibe. That will then be reflected in the exhaust points across her shoulder, where I'm going to try and sort of emit a small glow from them as well. But yes, I do think, whilst a lot of the model is going to be quite intricate with little buckles and studs and rings and things like that, I think this element, the infernal engine part, is going to be the challenge. So I'm confident that I can achieve a good look for her, and I'm excited to see what I'm actually capable of in that regard. But for now, the process is the same as it always is. I've got a little bit of cleanup to do over the pieces that are printed. I need to just sort of remove any pegs, sand back any edges that I'm not quite happy with, which honestly I don't think is going to take very long at all. And then I will be spraying down a black primer ready for painting. So I don't think there's anything else for me to waffle about just yet, so I'm going to get started. So, the black primer has gone on really nicely, as it normally does. It's a little glossy, glossy is too strong a word. It has a slight shimmer to it, and I was sort of laughing away to myself at the beginning of this process, because, again, I felt like I cheated a little bit with Lae'zel when she was wearing all of that armour, and sort of, with a little dry brush the armour was done and I never touched it again. And I kind of thought, well, I use a black foundation primer to begin my painting. Karlach wears a lot of black. I've cut a big corner again. However, it's a little too shimmery and sheeny to sort of give the proper look that I want. And so hilariously, I think I'm going to have to go over it with another black to kind of dull that shine down. However, that is a problem for another day. At the moment, I'm working on the skin colour, and I am still not happy with it as a base colour. I think it is too bright, too garish, and a bit too cartoony. However, with washes, aging, dry brushing, detailing, I'm hoping to knock it back a bit closer to where I want it to be. So, first job is going to be the skin colour. I'm going to try and get through that as best I can, and then I'm going to bother re-blacking a already black model at a later time. So, I started painting just before 9 o'clock this morning, and it is now 10 to 2, so it's been a long day. Not the most productive, though. I don't have a tremendous amount to show for it, simply because the colour that I'm adding is quite thin and quite streaky, and it is taking multiple coats, is basically the top and bottom of it. I want a decent, consistent, sort of healthy skin colour. I don't want her to look too dishevelled, if you know what I mean. I want the colour to be consistent across her skin. And so with all the little straps and buckles and sort of like tight spaces and things that she has across her person, I'm having to try and get a brush into a very fine space and apply even strokes of paint multiple times. And obviously because of the nature of that, in terms of like getting a paintbrush into a very tight space and sort of applying a little bit of colour, it's inconsistent, if you see what I mean. So there's like lumps of paint, and then I'm trying to streak it around in a very tight space to actually try and get a complete sort of smooth colour. And so it is taking a little bit of time. With those thicker bits of paint, it takes longer to dry. And so, yeah, it's not been the most productive day of painting, but it has still been I've still made considerable progress with her, if you know what I mean. I've still got a long way to go, and she looks a little messy at the moment. At the end of day one, because of the nature of what I've just described in terms of having to get the paintbrush into very tight spaces, there's a lot of paint just sort of like slapped over the black primer that I've done, and it's sort of, I'm going to have to tidy it up, which, whilst not ideal, it's something that I was probably going to have to do anyway, in terms of painting and reapplying the black to get a chalkier finish rather than the sheeny sort of leather. So yeah, it's been a long day. I'm going to go relax for the rest of the afternoon whilst I can. But yeah, it's going to take a little while to get this skin colour consistent, I think. I think that is going to be, maybe the next week's worth of work, is just sort of trying to get that right for her so that she looks good. But I'm hoping progress will be pretty swift once I have got that on, because in reality the black base gives me massive sort of leaps in other regards. So yes, a very long and tiring day with little to show for it, but hey, that's the nature of the beast, I suppose. So, that was one of, probably is the longest time it has taken me to apply base colours to a model. So much has changed in the past couple of weeks. So much has changed. Like, just my week-to-week life is different to what it was when I started this, with so much more going on, being so much busier than I was before. And so I have literally had to attack this paint job sort of when I have had 5 minutes spare. And so it has meant sort of, rather than being able to spend like whole days or whole half days just sort of sat painting, it's literally when I've got like half an hour spare coming up and doing a coat of something, so on and so forth. So a lot has changed. From the model side of things, this was probably one of the more challenging ones as well. Going back to Jack and Daxter. Jack and Daxter took a long time to paint because the paints that I was using, they were very streaky in places, and particularly things like skin colour and stuff like that. It meant that I was having to go over and over and over and over to try and get a thick and full colour. Karlach was that on steroids, because the red is very consistent, and obviously at the moment it is very, very, very red, which, you know, isn't the right colour, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it took so long, and there's just tiny little gaps, like the leather cording around her bicep, like there's a sliver of skin in that space, and so you have to do like 3 or 4 coats on that little part of her just to try and get the consistency right so that it actually looks like part of her arm. I, admittedly was sort of trying to shortcut certain things because I was hoping like the stark contrast between sort of different parts of the model would make things easier. So, for example, a muted red against black will look more red because the black is black. Do you know what I mean? And so I was trying to make it quicker. But I'm kind of glad that didn't work out for me. I'm kind of glad that I was forced to just do it properly, go over the base colours time and time again, and just get her where she needed to be. Because I think she looks great for it. I'm really, really pleased, and I think the intensity of the red is really striking, before I've actually done any sort of detailing work. Speaking of, my intention is to sort of, obviously she has quite severe burns over on her right shoulder, presumably due to the process of the infernal engine, like basically cooking her from the inside. And so she has quite severe burns on that side and quite a lot of texturing on that shoulder. So it's my intention to kind of dry brush over the top of that with maybe some sort of muted and dusky pinks to try and take the heat out of the red skin. I am toying with the idea of doing that across everything. In terms of like the red skin, I mean. I'm toying with the idea of doing that across the whole model, but I haven't fully decided yet. I'm going to be honest as well, the next step is kind of hard to pick out. I don't really know what order to do things in, and I'm going to sort of sit and think about it off camera just to try and figure out what it is I need to do. The eyes, the white of the eyes, I still want to kind of keep consistent with what I did with Lae'zel and keep the sort of like the Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle like white eyes, sort of, or at least pupilless eyes. I don't know whether white's the right colour for Karlach. It sort of feels a little bit too high of a contrast, so that might be changing. I obviously have the infernal engine to do as part of her chest, and obviously that is potentially going to be quite messy as I apply textures and sort of smooth out colours. So it's quite likely that I'm going to have to go over some of the black straps again within this sort of like underbust kind of bit, where obviously that is where the core of the infernal engine is. And I'm going to have to get in there with some very light colours to try and create that sense of heat. So my gut wants nothing more than to just paint the dry brushing on and just sort of watch the textures come to life. But I think this is going to be a slightly lengthier process in which the detailing phase is more than just sort of dry brushing a decent base colour job. So yeah, I think I'm going to kind of problem solve a little bit before I go any further, as I kind of decide what it is I'm going to be doing next. But it's details that need to be done, so the infernal engine, her eyes, her horns, muck and sort of scuff texture on the leather to kind of age it before I dry brush it at the very end. There's a few bits that need doing, and I'm just trying to decide what the best order is. I'm going to be honest, I totally underestimated Karlach. I totally underestimated this model. I looked at her in comparison to Lae'zel, and I thought, yeah, there'll be a little bit of sort of like fiddly bits in terms of like the buckles and the sort of jewellery across her, for want of a better word. But man, this is like twice as difficult. this is a hard one. This is truly a challenge. So I'm going to go away and just sort of deliberate a little bit on what it is I want to do next. And yeah, it's details though. I know that for sure. I just don't know where I'm going to start yet. So, the base pass of details are done. I kind of had a sneaking suspicion when I was working on Karlach that the base colours would take a long time to put on. However, I would kind of reap the benefits at this point in the process, in which if the base colouring was good, the lines were sharp, the colours were thick. When it came to adding washes, details and dry brushing over the top, that she would just jump to life. And I'm mostly happy with that thought, and it has mostly come true as well. So, I'm pleased about that. Couple other things still to do. Karlach has a tattoo on her left shoulder, I think it is. Obviously, I will double check this, but I think she has the tattoo on her left shoulder, which still needs to go on. It's a very kind of like tribal-y, kind of like almost like war paint kind of design, so I don't expect it to take me too long, but it is still a detail that I desperately want on the model. And I do have to decide whether or not I want to decorate her with any blood, as though she has been in a conflict. It really suited Lae'zel. Obviously, she was hanging on to a severed Mind Flayer head, so of course it made sense that she had blood on her. However, I don't know whether I want that for Karlach. Karlach's attitude and sort of like the pose and stuff that she has speaks to it maybe not being that kind of a model, that kind of a scene. Almost as though this is her at camp, either between conflicts or preparing to adventure for the day or something like that. That's kind of more where I've got her. Or maybe even just preparing for battle, kind of going off of the base, because the base is very simple, and as you can see, I'm just very slightly working on it here. What I would like is, it's almost like a very small disc of cracked earth, and when, in the game, Karlach goes into a rage, the floor underneath her cracks, and this sort of like golden, almost like magma light comes out of the floor underneath her as she goes into her rage. And so I'm just ever so slightly simulating that here by basically forcing some kind of very bright orange and yellow paint into the crevices on the base, so that when I dry brush over the top of it with various earth textures, those golds hopefully stay embedded within there. But yeah, there's not really much to speak of in terms of conflict within this model, so I don't think I am going to do much blood spatter, if any. Almost as like this is Karlach before a fresh day of adventuring. One thing I do want to quickly go over as well is I've added some mud and kind of dirt texturing to her boots and sort of like her legs mainly, as if she's been running, like mud has spattered up her legs or whatever. Some bits have dried down beautifully, Other bits I need to go over because sort of in the process of them being handled, or even just sort of how I've applied the paint in the first place, some of that has disappeared. So I want to make sure that I add that detailing in there so that it looks right for her. But she is rapidly approaching her conclusion. Like I say, base, tattoo, a little bit of mud and texturing, and then a quick decision on whether or not I'm actually going to do any blood work on her. At this point, sat here right now, I don't think I am. I think this is going to be sort of Karlach pre-adventure, if you like. And so she's ready to go, or she's just preparing for a battle or something like that. The battle hasn't occurred or isn't occurring as far as I'm concerned. So I think I'm going to leave her quite clean in comparison to Lae'zel. But yeah, like I say, she is rapidly approaching her finish line, which is really quite exciting. A couple bits left to do. The tattoo's going to be a little bit fiddly, I feel, just before the end of this. But yeah, I'm really ready to have her finished now. What a journey. When I started making models, specifically through Make Stuff, I kind of fantasized about having this sort of library of videos in which I would have access to the memories of making these things, right? All of the characters that I'm picking and all of the models that I'm choosing, they have some kind of sentimentality to me. You know, obviously at the moment I've painted a lot of video game models, and you know, these are all games that are important to me in some way, shape or form, significant, or you know, whatever, they have value to me. And so I've been picking models that kind of reflect that, right? The whole thing of having videos of their of their making, of their creation, is so that I can look back on them in years to come and, you know, really remember what it was like to paint them, see the process, see the ups and downs of having made a model, etc. And, you know, like I say, there's this ideal version of things in my head in which I have this huge catalogue of memories of building all of this stuff. A lot of the models previously have been sort of almost like a battle with self-confidence, right? So, you know, there's been a few videos where I think Lae'zel and potentially War were the first two videos in which I really felt like I was finding my stride with these things. You know, I was just sort of finding that peace in myself to be happy with the work that I'm doing. And, you know, I feel like I am still there currently. Obviously, this thing is gonna fluctuate, I'm sure. But obviously in terms of life, little has changed. A lot has changed during the making of Karlach, and you know, it is one of those things that has become part of the build, if you like. You know, I've taken a big step towards looking after myself a little bit better. Sometimes, especially when it comes to my hobbies and things like this, I can become very obsessive and I can draw into these things and just not come out. And so, you know, other things get put by the wayside. And that goes for all of the hobbies that I have, obviously model making and, you know, martial arts, etc, etc. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I kind of become hyper fixated on, and I don't like to let go of them. But during the making of Karlach, I have taken it upon myself to look after myself a little bit more. You know, I've really changed my diet. I'm exercising very frequently. I'm, you know, stretching so that I'm not hurting myself when I'm doing all of this exercise. I'm trying to live a happier life. And it all happened during the process of this make, you know. not as a result of, but definitely alongside. And, you know, it's one of those things that I want to kind of add in here just to sort of say that that happened during this build. The model itself, though, I am thrilled with. I'm so happy with how she turned out, and I think stood next to Lae'zel here, she looks fantastic. I was really nervous to begin with about doing the Infernal Engine. I thought the Infernal Engine was going to be really hard, and it turns out I was completely correct. Getting flat paint and texture to look like it is glowing is very difficult. And whilst I don't think I have completely achieved the look that I sort of had in my head, I'm very happy with the look that I managed. I ended up doing it about 3 or 4 times, so basically painting in the colours that I thought would work, and then painting it red, and then painting in the colours I thought would work again, painting it red, and eventually landed where I have, and I'm really pleased. I think it's one of those signature pieces that turns it into an elevated model of Karlach rather than just sort of, you know, a standard paint job, if you like. You know, I'm really pleased I was able to get that on there. Conversely to that, I thought that the tattoo on her left shoulder was going to be really challenging, and turned out to be very straightforward. With the position of her arm and how she's sort of holding her axe on her side, a lot of the tattoo is masked by the clothing and the sort of the leatherwork that she's got wrapped around her upper arm. So turns out that there wasn't really much tattoo to put on there, or at least not much space to put tattoo on there. And so I looked at a few source images, improvised what I could because the space is very fiddly, and yeah, it definitely sells the vibe of the tattoo that she has, and ended up being a very simple and straightforward piece of the model that probably took me no more than 20 minutes to kind of intricately put on. But like I say, the Infernal Engine really sticks out to me, and one of the things that I kind of consciously did was I've painted her eyes, the red heat in her chest, and the kind of the magma cracking up from the floor, all in the same shade of orange, so it looks like it's all connected to her, like it's all a result of her. And yeah, I think it really ended up working out. The skin colour ended up dulling down beautifully. Normally when I do these, I kind of dry brush in a standard colour, right? I kind of knock them back using the same kind of tones. I just use different intensities of dry brushing. So if I'm wanting to catch like leather armour or whatever, I'll probably do more dry brushing and more sort of paint coverage over those parts to try and lift that, whereas skin I kind of leave alone and it sort of try and keep it as smooth as possible. But with Karlach, I actually experimented a little bit with dry brushing with a number of different colours to kind of try and give her skin an imperfect look. I think for her skin I ended up doing it in sort of like a rosy pink, a slightly dull orange, and then a beige kind of colour. And I think the finished look is great. I'm really pleased with it. She fits right in with the other models that I've done. And yeah, I think it kind of sells that kind of, almost like she's been on the road for a long time. Like her skin isn't sort of, her complexion's not perfect, but it still portrays the texture of skin. And I'm really pleased with that. The model itself came together wonderfully. And obviously during partway through this, I ended up saying that I was struggling to find time almost to paint her, and so when I did paint her I got very involved and I just sort of lost myself for an hour or two just to be able to get some paint on her. But I think during that process I was paranoid that I wasn't doing a very good job, and I'm sure Hannah was sick of me constantly asking, like, do you think this bit's okay, and come back and look again, do you think it's all right, like make sure you think it's good, because if it's not I'll do it again. And I think at this part in the journey, the end, you know, I'm really pleased with how she turned out. I think she looks just as good as Lae'zel, and I'm really proud of her. You know, she will sit perfectly within the collection again, and I'm really thrilled for that. But as you know, that now brings me to the end of another model project, and I have got one more to go in my little trilogy of models before I am completed and moving on to something new. I will say here there might be a little bit of a longer gap between videos just because I'm thinking about redecorating and kind of giving the studio of a zhuzh just to try and liven it up a little bit. It feels quite dark in here some days when I'm working, so I'm thinking about taking some time to do that between Karlach and Shadowheart. But Shadowheart will be the next project. So, stay tuned if you're interested, I guess. But, as always, it is wonderful to see people commenting on these videos. It's wonderful to see people liking these videos and being really supportive. I really, truly appreciate it. It makes it feel like I'm not just shouting into the void. It's really nice to hear from people, and I try and comment back or like everything that people send, because I truly do enjoy hearing what people think and receiving that feedback. It's really genuinely appreciated. I never like doing the whole like and subscribe thing, so as always, it's really been a pleasure putting this video together, and I hope to see you in the next one.